should I have Welcome to MediaPath. I am Louise Palanker.
And I'm Fritz Coleman.
And this is a very special episode of MediaPath, and here's why. In 1951, at the age of 15, Bruce Belland opened a stage door at Ciro's Nightclub in West Hollywood and came face-to-face with his musical hero, Harry Mills of the Mills Brothers. The encounter inspired Bruce to form his own harmony group, the Four Preps, while still in high school. Today, Bruce comes face-to-face, face-to-Zoom face, that is, with John Mills of the Mills Brothers, who toured with his father, original Mills brother Donald Mills, for 15 years. Bruce has questions, and that full circle moment is coming right up. But first, Fritz, what have you been watching this week?
All right, well, I want to talk about Avatar 2, The Way of the Water. This won't be as long as the movie is. Thank the good Lord for that. It's in theaters now. It's been 13 years since the first Avatar. In this one, the Earth is dying. Humans are looking to get out of Dodge and inhabit a healthier planet, so they pick Pandora, or Avatar Land. Under this renewed threat from humans, Jake Sully and his family seek refuge with another tribe, the Metcalina, on Pandora, and hijinks and high-tech stuff ensue. There are three positive takeaways of this film from me. One, the idea of an uninvited military incursion into a foreign land. It kind of suggests Vietnam. Number two, there's a great environmental theme. One of the touching aspects of the story is belief that humans and animals have a spiritual connection. That really resonated with me. And number three, in the end, it's the children or the next generation that will ultimately save us from ourselves. It's stars, or these stars are unrecognizable avatars that are stars. Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, Kate Winslet. One reviewer made a comment that I agree with. It's more impressive as a technical achievement than in storytelling. But the technology is mind-blowing. Everyone is aware of how they create characters these days with motion capture. What is beyond amazing is the rest of the physical aspects of this movie. It's obviously CGI, but it's so flawless, you can't believe it's CGI. The vehicles they drive, the sea life, anything and everything man-made is digital creation. I had to go home and look up the making of Avatar videos on YouTube to see how it was done. Very impressive, but be prepared. It's over 3 hours long. Fortunately, the miracle of the planet Pandora is that even at 3 hours plus, you still don't have to use the bathroom a lot. So it's pretty good. I thought it was a technical achievement, but I felt like I was watching sort of a watered-down version of Gossip Girls. The dialogue is about that intense.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, that's a lot. That was a hybrid that I wasn't prepared for. Okay. I am going to highly recommend My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman, who recently took a circuitous route through Poland into Ukraine via planes and trains for a stirring, personal, and in-depth conversation with President Volodymyr Zelensky. For the sake of safety, the interview is conducted in front of a small audience on a subway platform deep below the city of Kyiv. Letterman and Zelensky face each other, both wearing translator headsets, which they struggle to hear over the subway traffic, seeing in each other a fellow intelligent, insightful, thoughtful, and engaged comedian whose lives have taken very different paths. The mutual respect is what is palpable. Letterman clearly admires Zelensky's courage and fortitude in this critical moment. Zelensky is grateful that Letterman has made the dangerous journey. The conversation took place before Zelensky traveled to D.C. and addressed Congress. The two men talk about purpose, history, family, and even share some jokes, but the mood respects the circumstances and remains somber. If you have not yet sampled Dave's latest venture, My Next Guest, use the Zelensky episode as an entry point and then pick and choose what you like. Dave has spoken with, for example, Barack Obama, George Clooney, Billie Eilish, Jay-Z, Tina Fey, Ellen DeGeneres, and a bunch more. And his understanding of his guests is broadened by some of his familiar and delightful out-of-studio exploration that fans will find enjoyable and endearing. For example, he sneaks into Ellen's offices at Warner Brothers and helps her scare innocent staffers. The Letterman fun here is fully intact, but the show gives him an opportunity to stretch himself further intellectually and offer us an example of how we can all spend our lives continuing to learn and grow. My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with Dave Letterman is on Netflix. And now, did you have something to say about that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I think one of Dave's endearing qualities, and it has nothing to do with his comedy, is his humanity. And the fun for me, it was a great interview. I mean, the translation slows everything down so it's not as spontaneous. And when they had the air raid siren in the middle, it kind of took my concentration away from it. But it was Dave walking around Kyiv, sort of absorbing the devastation of war. And Dave's, you can tell, he really is a very sensitive person. I remember after 9/11, his first night back, his monologue was so touching, and it became a viral moment. And you could see a little of that humanity in this, and I really liked it. I thought he was a great representative of the United States going over there. So I love this show.
Yeah, it's really, I highly recommend. And I think it's time for us to introduce our guest. John H. Mills II has been singing since he was a baby. He joined the act with his father, original Mills brother Donald Mills, in 1982, continuing a tradition begun in 1922 by Harry, Herbert, Donald, and John Mills I as young children. The Mills brothers released records in every decade from the 20s into the 90s. Their hits include Paper Doll, Nevertheless, Till Then, Lazy River, Cab Driver, and the list just goes on and on and on. John Mills II performs Mills Brothers classics today with Randy Taylor, and he joins us with his fanboy, Bruce Belland. Here's a little bit about Bruce Belland. Bruce Belland formed his group, the Four Preps, in high school. They scored massive hits with 26 Miles and Big Man, and they were known for their especially entertaining stage shows. With the Four Preps, Bruce was just beginning. He is quite the polymath, an entertainer, singer, songwriter, recording and concert artist, a screenwriter, actor, director, network executive, public speaker, playwright, producer, voiceover performer, radio host, humorist, and now an author. Bruce's book, Icons, Idols, and Idiots of Hollywood, My Adventures in America's First Boy Band, is coming your way soon. And I would like to launch this conversation with an excerpt from Bruce's upcoming book. I'll set the stage. Bruce is 15 years old. He has snuck into the stage door at Ciro's with a distant hope of getting a glimpse of his idols, the Mills Brothers. Bruce writes, a few minutes later, he walks in. My absolute number one hero of all group singers in the whole entire universe, Harry Mills. No one idolizes his heroes like a 15-year-old boy, and I'm practically numb with excitement. Harry looks like $1 million in a shiny black mohair tuxedo, butterfly bow tie, and patent leather tuxedo shoes. He is the essence of cool. Bruce, can you take the story from there for us?
Sure. First of all, John, I hope I'm right about having met you and your father at Jerry's Deli in the Marina. I remember meeting the two of you and telling him how much he had influenced me in my career. And he said, I said, it's just wonderful. You're still out performing with your son. And he said something at the time that I didn't understand, John, but now I do. He said, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to do that. I think he said he was 83, and he said, the traveling is really starting to get to me. And I remember thinking to myself, because that was, I don't know what I was in my 60s probably, how could anybody ever get tired of traveling? 83, 86. When I hit 83, I understood exactly what he was referring to. But John, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I feel, as I said to Weezy, I feel a little like a little leaguer who's asking questions of the son of Babe Ruth. But I'll try not to make the questions too esoteric. Well, first of all, John, here's to you. I noticed you were enjoying, so let's clink our glasses telephonically. I don't think there was any group that influenced the Four Preps the way the Mills Brothers did, partially because from the age of 5 on, my house was constantly filled with their music. During the war, my mother, of course, played Till Then, like every mother did whose husband was gone overseas. And it became, ultimately, the Preps recorded it, and I still consider, in all modesty, the best solo I've ever sung in 70 years. I felt such an affinity for the song and such an affection for it. But I just thought I'd give you a quick rundown of the songs by the Mills Brothers that we recorded. Till Then, let me see, I'll Be Around, Someday You'll Want Me to Want You. My favorite Preps track was She Was 5 and He Was 10. I'm sure you're familiar with that track. As I say, I'll try not to make the questions. Oh, and Up a Lazy River on the in-person album that kind of put the Preps at the top in the concert field. It was a live concert album. We ended the show with the brothers' arrangement of Up a Lazy River. And one thing I've always wanted to know, I assume from listening that the brothers, it was head harmony, that there were no written charts as a rule. They simply ran a song down and felt their way harmonically.
Yes, absolutely. Everything was head arrangements. They never had any vocal charts written, which is interesting because I'm working with a young man now out of Ireland, of all places, and I've just started going through about 10 at a time. I'm just going to start creating a book of their vocal arrangements. It's never been done.
Wow.
It's never been done. It's never anything that anyone has. And people are always asking, because everybody always thinks of 4-part harmony, but the Mills always sang harmonies that fit the melody, and not necessarily, just pick their spots where they let that rose. Those rose petals unfold, so to speak. Man, I have to tell you, if he was 83 at the time, when he passed, he was 84. So that must have been right around 1998.
Okay.
Yeah, and I worked with him 17 years, and then another, well, it's been 40 years I've been doing this show in 2022. So but I've always admired you. I've always admired all the people because I worked with him. It put me in an area of music that I never would have been able to be around as much, especially performing on stage, as I would have if I was just in my own age group.
Yes.
So because of working with him, I got to work with the Sarah Vaughan's and the Billy Ecksteins and the all of the the great artists era and prior, and all of the strong women that people don't recognize as much as they should, the Helen O'Connells and Patty Pages and Kay Stars, and these women were just amazingly strong. Can you imagine being a 14-year-old Kay Star on a bus, with Joe Venuti and his gang, and traveling the country? I mean, we have no idea what these people have gone through. So it's an honor to speak with you, and anything I can share with you, of course, I'm happy to do so. And hey, Wheezy, what's up, man? And tell Fritz Coleman to wake up over there.
I'm with you, man. I love anything having to do with music history. This is all very fascinating. And while you have my attention and kept me awake, can I call you Skip or John? Which do you appreciate?
Well,
no, not you, Bruce. Don't you respond to Skip. Let me say something to Bruce.
You want to see how I prepared for this? These are my notes and my questions.
You've got cue cards the size of Bob Hope's. They had to bring him in a forklift.
I've got 7 more pages.
I'm not going to inject much. This is a fascinating conversation. I just wanted to ask you one question that sort of helps me understand. You said Harry was your favorite, and Harry, John will back me up on this, was the personality in the group. Not only a beautiful voice, and so was that the reason you tended to be drawn to him and his talent?
Well, I must say, musically, vocally, and as I say, I wanted to be a singer since I was age 4, so I knew a lot of, my mom was a vocal coach and a choir director. Donald was the essence of elegant smoothness. I've never heard a man do head tones so easy, like it was just a walk in the park. What I liked about Harry, of course, was his ebullience. He was very outgoing, and that night at Ciro's, kind of solidified my affection for him because he was very much an extrovert and seemed to be genuinely interested in me. I told him my dad was a minister and I sang in the church choir. And he said, well, we all started in the church choir. And he actually sang a little bit of Do Lord, oh do remember, right there backstage at Ciro before he went out on stage and thrilled the people. I meant to tell you, John, my 2 daughters' lullaby the whole time they were growing up was Daddy's Little Girl. And, I sang it with an extra emotion because of what it meant to me in my life and the Mills Brothers. Let me get, if you don't mind, let me get to the rest of my questions.
Sure.
I know at one point the brothers had a bass. One of the brothers sang bass, and when he no longer was with the group, I'm amazed at how, because there are barbershop purists, as I'm sure you know, who say, well, you can't have barbershop without a bass. You got to have four parts. Yet I never missed the bass when they sang. Somehow, I don't know if it was Herbert or who it was, had a way of doing what you'd think a bass might do in certain parts of the harmony, so you never missed it. I listened the other day to one they had on an album called I'll See You in My Dreams. Very close harmony. And I kept saying, there's four parts. I'm sure there are four parts, and I'm pretty good at picking out parts. I could not find a fourth part, but I didn't miss it. Was there ever an instance in which they missed a bass or wanted a bass or were glad they didn't have a bass? What was their attitude towards that?
Well, thank you. It's a great question. And as I mentioned earlier, the four-part harmony is, yes, they kind of set the structures of that and the standards on that. And many groups took over four-part harmonies. When the doo-wop thing came, the interesting thing to me, though, like if I would effort to pick a comparative analysis, seemed like when doo-wop came around, you had four-part harmony, but everybody was singing at a loud level of solo artist.
That's right.
That's why you heard, that high tenor and that low bass and everything in between. Whereas with the guys, they always had, I always, like if you ever saw a logo of a hat I made for them, it looks like a speaker, and then depending on how you see it, it's either four going in or one. The idea was four voices coming in, but one sound coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that's the whole thing. So the idea was a blended sound of and creating that single sound. So yes, their brother sang bass and played a four-string tenor. But when he passed, their father, John Sr., joined them.
He did more of a string bass part, didn't he?
Well, that bass that he did was, I've talked to guys like Harold Windley, with the Clovers, and this was the sound that these guys all tried to emulate, was John's bass. He had the greatest bass ever. Now, you mentioned Herbert, because Herbert generally sang first tenor.
I thought Harry sang.
Well, Harry sang, well, again, you're not wrong, because as a group, they all had to learn each other's parts, just in case somebody was sick one day or whatever. So they could all kind of interplay which part had to be strengthened at any given time. But I have found, and maybe you have too with other singers that you've met over time, I shouldn't say a lot, I've met a few first tenors who also had very strong, deep bass ranges. Now, I'm not talking about the Vienna Boys choirs. I'm just talking about, natural, like the guy who sang with me for 20 years. Elmer Hopper sang, before he was with me for 20 years, he spent 20 years with Paul Roby's Platters. When he was working with Paul, he was doing all of Tony Williams' top solos, that high... Yeah. At high ten, but Elmer could go as low as anybody on bass in any time that he wanted, and Herb was the same. So I think when they picked tunes, even as a trio, even when Norman Brown came in, because Norman joined them when John passed. Also, eventually, I think he actually started with him 36 or 37. His chord arrangements on his guitar and his lead tones into the melody were just artful and genius, and they set up so many things. And lastly, I'll leave you with this. So they knew, like even the years when I worked with my dad, it was just a duo. And people would say, well, hey, I miss, I don't miss that third part.
Yeah. Good for you.
The thing is, too, is, and I found with audiences and with fans, and I'm guilty of this with many artists, a lot of the stuff you hear with your heart. When I started working with a lot of older artists, especially, seems like older women, they get looked at like, oh, you're losing something, a little earlier than guys. Guys get away with it a little bit longer, or so it seemed, right?
Yeah.
But I've been on stage, shared stages with many artists that no one cared what they sounded like that night. They just wanted to see them. You know, I worked with Dorothy Lamour, you know, a couple of times, and the audience didn't care if she couldn't sing a lick. Just, you know, they just wanted to hear somebody who spent all that time. And by the time I worked with Burns, you know, Burns wasn't chirping like a bird, but nobody cared. You know what I'm saying, man. So
yes,
I don't think I think they were skillful enough at knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses, if there would be any, to pick the sounds that were perfect for the recordings. And I think they always did that. And if Herb needed to drop down to a bass, he would do it. You know, Harry and Dad, you know, Don, they switched. Oftentimes they would switch, taking the lead, and then the other would slip into the baritone.
I heard melody go on top for a minute. Is that compute?
Yeah, I absolutely, man. I don't think they were built to any particular structures. They just wanted great sound and a good song, and they wanted to agree that yes, let's do this. I mean, even Paper Doll, which was as huge a hit as anything. You know, no one really liked the song until they flipped it and did something with it to make it hip. You know, whatever hip may be at that time. So, and I think eventually they did settle into a bit of structure. You know, you mentioned my dad's dulcet tones, if you will, you know, and so it was obvious many times he would take that pretty ballad part, and then when it would go to like a swing tempo, Harry would jump in with that bright, you know, just a little bit more nasally.
A little more edge to it.
Yeah, man. And that was it. And then finish up with that, you know, that blend, and it's it, man. So, you know, you're acute.
Did they ever have, this is a singer's question, did they ever have voice problems? Well, they sounded so easy, and I was going to say siblings have an advantage that four guys not related don't, in their tonal quality is usually so similar. If you hear the Ames brothers, for example, they've got a natural kind of timbre of their voices that is very compatible. Did they ever have voice problems, and did they ever warm up? Did they stand backstage and warm up?
I couldn't get my dad to warm up to save his life, and that was, you know, he had no intentions of wasting that time. And, you know, and we weren't allowed to have voice problems. I mean, even like, you know, if you came back with a cold, he'd just say, sing over it.
I love it. You know, that one of the things that I noticed in their arrangements quite often, they sang the melody the first time through, usually with your dad, Donald, singing that and establishing the melody. But it was very much jazz oriented in that once Donald set the melody, Harry would come back in the second course and say, let me show you what I can do with that melody. Well, I guess I've had $1 million or more. And Cy Coleman said about Harry's solo on Opus 1, it's one of the best jazz solos he's ever heard. What they did that we emulated in our first hit, 26 Miles, they would do the melody, and then, let me see if I can see my notes here, and there were certain Opus 1, well, I'm racking my brain to think of a name to give it this tune so Harry can croon. Yeah, you know, yeah, you'll never grow old, no, you know. They do what we came to call parallels. So the melody, and then the second chorus, well, the melody on 26 Miles is 26 miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is the wait. Well, on the last chorus, 26 miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is the waiting for me, 26 miles across the sea. We did the parallels, and all we had to say in rehearsal, let's do parallels on the end, and everybody knew what we meant because we were used to the Mills Brothers still here.
I think that's so beautiful, you know, and I think that it's, to me, it's a real pleasure to hear you break it down almost, you know, into a musical theory or, you know, a little scientificness. You know, they worked for so long together that I don't know that they ever, you know, really broke it down into what are we actually doing. You know, I just think that, you know, they just knew each other's sound. You know, when I started, and again, I try to keep things in perspective. When I brought in Elmer Hopper, who had spent 20 years with Paul Roby's Platters, now the Platters were no slouch. You know what I mean? They might have had basically 5 years of hits, but those 5 years of hits were bigger and still today as big as anything that's ever been done.
And so, Tony Williams.
Hey, man, nobody's doing Tony Williams tribute shows because they can't. So, you know, I mean, let's be honest. It's like, you know, you don't hear somebody going around doing my Mathis show. No, you can't do that. You don't know how. So, but the thing is that these artists, in order to try and emulate the sound, that's really what we're talking about here. And the formulas, maybe some producer, you know, recognized that. I don't know, but I can go all the way back to the early 30s and listen to the way they did things, and I don't see much difference at all, except maybe they were doing, you know, more, as you mentioned, the jazz, well, you know, the scatting and the, you know, but it was it was still that melody laid out. You know, you can go back and listen to Dinah, you know, and I'm talking about like 1932, 33, 34, and Harry lays out the melody. You know, he may set it up, and then, you know, then those harmonies will come in, and then it just takes off onto its own thing. So, yeah, you know, it is amazing. It's amazing when you say, you know, the songs that you guys recorded. I think, you know, even today, I think Michael Bublé's done 12 of their tunes, man, you know, and so, you know, we all try and enjoy what is good, and then we try and do our version of what is good and make it hopefully, you know, as good, if not better. All the songs are pleasurable. I mean,
that's right.
And you know, that's what you want to do, man. You want to do something that everybody enjoys.
One enjoyed listening to them and watching them because they enjoyed it. Particularly Harry, who was dancing around, and Donald was just the elegant kind of, you know, soft sell. Oh, what a pure velvet voice. There's a question I've been dying to ask you since I found I'd be talking to you. Did they ever listen to, admire, or comment or dislike any other groups?
You know, I think not. I mean, of course they admired people. You know, there were people that they, you know, Harry, like you mentioned, seeing Harry at Ciro's. I bet Harry closed down Ciro's that night. Harry loved going out. He loved hanging with, you know, all his buddies were in Basie's band or Cab's band or Ellington's band. You know, Harry was, you know, my dad had 6 kids, so he better not be out. But I'm sure he was out more than
he wasn't out all the time.
Yeah, exactly, right. You know, so, yeah, of course, I mean, they loved, you know, and they had a love affair with many other artists. You know, I think there was great admiration. You know, Louis Armstrong and Duke, and they didn't record with Basie until '68, but that was because their schedules never gave them a chance to. You know, so when they finally got a chance to do that, they knocked out 2 albums fast as they could, and then went on with their lives. And those are 2 of my favorite albums that they've ever done, man. You know, I mean, because you had. Who's the guy? Dick Hyman, you know, arranged one of those albums, and Chico O'Farrell the other. And you had those great arrangers, and then those great artists and those great players, and everybody just showing up and laying it down, man. It's like, you know, first time I worked with Basie's band, my man.
Sounded like you said the first time you worked with Basie's band.
Right, I did, yeah. You know, Freddie Green was still alive, man. You know, Freddie was with Basie probably before Basie got there, and I'm sitting on stage with, like, me and my dad. I got Freddie Green in my hip pocket. What's her name had come back from Denmark to take over the band. The great trumpet player. I'll come back to that in a bit. And, you know, I was just realizing, like, if anything's wrong on this stage, it's none of them. You know? So, no, man, we're just been very fortunate to listen to a lot of great artists for a long time. And believe me, they adored, you know, their mom almost adopted Ella when she was a kid. And my dad actually introduced her to Chick Webb. So they go back. I mean, you know, yeah, and there were many more artists that they appreciated. When I was working down in Palm Springs, like for a 7-month stretch, I used to drive back and forth all the time with my dad, and we were listening to the Rolling Stones, Voodoo Lounge, like most of the time. So, you know, big fans of good and great and whatever, man. I mean, and if there were people that they didn't like, it never came out of their mouths. They weren't about to badmouth anybody. That you know, they weren't like that.
Well, in the 50s, when we were starting and developing a sound and figuring out, first of all, we started with melody on top. And then we submitted our demo tape to Capitol Records, and they said, fellas, we already have the Four Freshmen. We don't really, and they were another idols of mine. I got to know Bob Flanagan and Ross Barber quite well. And I was just curious as to knowing the natural instincts of the brothers, if they ever listened to groups. When we were in the 50s, along came our other idols, the Four Lads, the Four Aces, the Ames brothers, all of whom had melody second part down. We had a high tenor who could raise the rafters and then go to a falsetto or a head tone. He was my second favorite singer I ever sang with. So we experimented a lot, but it's such a joy to meet you and talk to you about these guys because, as I say, it's like Babe Ruth's son. To me, from age 5 on, you can't get much more embedded with a group than for the last, what is that? That's 81 years ago I first started listening to them. So I just admire him so much. And John, I really mean this honestly. If you ever need a tenor or a baritone, I'm in the book. Call me. I am available. I have my own tuxedo, and
Well, you got that glass of wine, so you had me at that.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, it would be an honor to share a stage with you anytime, man, and we'd be happy to sing everything. The kid that I brought in, and I do call him a kid because literally he just turned 34 years old, his last birthday. And this guy knows more Mills Brothers tunes than I know, man. He's like asking me about stuff from the 30s that I'm like, I have to go look up. I'm like, wait, no, I don't have that in the book, man. So the music is it's in good hands. I think the world is aware of all the works that have been done. Wheezy mentioned, 2022 or 1922 when the group formed. So, we're just now doing what will be our first celebration of centennial, and just 100 years of how do I say it? Uninterrupted live on stage performances, from 1922 through 2022, and then in 25 we'll do 100 years of through when they first started in broadcast radio. So if I'm lucky enough to live so long and continue on. I've spoken to many guys, Bruce, who have given me, similar stories. I mentioned Harold Windley earlier from the Clovers, is where he first got his original hits, and then for years he performed with a group of the Ink Spots singing that bass. And
Nick Denny.
Yeah, and he told me about the story about John and how his bass influenced them, both the brother, but also the father. And you mentioned Harry being such a effervescent kind of guy on stage. Well, Harry adored his oldest brother, John. John Charles was his name. But John being the eldest brother, when he passed away, it was Harry kind of took on that responsibility of doing everything he could to set the tone, like he wasn't going to let his brother John down. And this is where he developed that stage presence that, everybody in show business who's ever been on stage has remarked about. They always, whenever I talk to somebody, they tell me, that was Dean Martin's favorite guy was Harry. And he's right.
Yeah.
Because they carried themselves similarly. But the thing of it was really that they made everybody in a theater, they carried it as if they were talking to them directly. Like, they were just having this one-on-one conversation. Everybody felt like they were just talking to them.
He reminded me a little bit of Oliver Hardy in that he was a heavy-set man who was very light on his feet. He would dance around and do these balletic moves for this rather stout human being. It was wonderful to see the lightness, not only of his personality, but of his terpsichore. He was just, I always said Donald could have been Secretary of State, especially when he grew the beard. Such a handsome devil with that smooth. And I remember watching their documentary recently and hearing their manager say that Donald was always the one to say, it's going to be fine. Don't sweat it. Don't worry. No big deal. We'll be okay. Just let's get it together and go on.
You are so right about that because, when I started working with him, I was surprised. I can remember when Harry passed away, my mom said, well, that's it. That's the end of the Mills Brothers. Mm-hmm. And I was really surprised, when I shouldn't say I was surprised. was surprised that I ever got to work with him, but I realized then, how much he really enjoyed singing. Some singers just love to sing. I worked.
You can see it.
Right, I worked with Barbara McNair, man, and she was one of these people. She'd have sung at a 7-Eleven if they had a microphone. She didn't care. She wasn't trying to, you know what I mean. And that's, I'm not trying to cast any dispersions. I mean, she was fantastic, but they just loved to sing. And my dad was like that. He just loved to sing, man. And
we would come back from a 2-hour concert back to the motel, the Holiday Inn, and sit in the parking lot for another half hour and sing, because it was just such fun. There's a camaraderie that develops when you're on the road with other guys, dealing with canceled flights and bad hotel rooms and terrible airport food and stuff, all the things to deal with. And then you get out on stage and it all kind of fades into the background because there you are. And as I've always said, I never wanted to be, what really set it in my mind to be a harmony singer was that night at Ciro's seeing the Mills Brothers. I had sung in my mom's choir since I aged 4 or 5. My dad was a preacher, so he'd get me up on Sunday to sing, some little song. But the moment I heard them in that blend, and I had listened to them on record, but to hear it in person was a whole new experience. Not only to hear them in person, but to see the audience reaction. I say in the book, I sat backstage. I'm going to choke up on this. I sat backstage absolutely overwhelmed with the ease with which they absolutely transported that audience. I mean, it was musical magic. And on the way home that night, I knew I was going to get in trouble because I had sneaked out of my house after my parents went to sleep to go up to Ciro's to see the Mills Brothers. And I didn't care. I came back on cloud 10. I said, that's it. I want harmony. I got to get some other guys. And along came the talent show at Hollywood High School looking for performers. And I grabbed 3 guys in the school choir and said, let's go, and never looked back. So what I owe to the brothers is monumental to me. And having a chance to talk to you is a great thrill, buddy. This has just been wonderful.
Well, hey, Bruce, you got my phone number. If you don't, Weezy will give it to you, and we don't have to do anything special to get together, man. This is, there's a lot of Jerry's Delis out there, so we can hang out anytime you want. I've worked with all those cats that you mentioned. Ed Ames, he told me he and his brothers used to sneak into a theater. I forget what town he might have been from. Could have been Cleveland or Philly or somewhere, and he would say the same thing. And of course, I did many shows with the 4 Lads and Frank Busseri and those cats, and same stories, man. The Isley Brothers. I had a chance to meet Marvin Isley, who was the youngest brother. He was a bass player back in the 70s, and he was the youngest kid. The Isleys were kind of like my family. My siblings, there were 4 of them, and then came the next 2, but those 4 were always straight. And Marvin would tell me that it was forever before they would let him go on the road with them. But he told me a story. He passed away of diabetes, ate him up. The youngest cat, and when my dad was hospitalized, Marvin happened to be in the hospital at the same time with his bouts, and he had heard that my dad was in the hospital, and he just had to go down and meet him. That was something he had to do. And so he told me that his father was a military guy from, I believe, Cincinnati, Ohio. And when he met his mother, he said, hey, this is the Isley Brothers' dad. He said, we're going to get married, and we're going to have 4 kids, and they're going to be the next Mills Brothers. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. Now, the Isley Brothers, man, I don't know what, if you love music, you love all genres of music that are good. And these are the only cats that I know as a family that have recorded in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and I mean just hits after hits for decades after decades, and they continue to tour. And so, like you love talking this moment, I would love to speak with Ernie or the other brother who's still touring, because I just remember this moment with their youngest brother, man, how important that was, how significant that was, how nice it was for him to go in and talk to my dad in the hospital, how nice it was for me to hear these stories. Because listen, Bruce, truth, of showbiz and the way we get to travel the world and the niceties that we come across, as much as the hardships of the crappy hotels sometimes, is the stories, right? It's the stories that we get from people. It's the stories you get from your fans. It's the stories that you hear from people who tell you how much a particular song or a moment meant to them.
And they come up to you and say, "Till then was my song with my wife. That was our song." I mean that's. You get somebody coming up with an old dog-eared LP from 35 years ago that wants you to sign it. I mean, I've always said it's the greatest business in the world to be in, to make a living, because when you're gone, you're not really gone. I mean, look at the Mills Brothers.
You're right. You're right, and that's a little bit daunting too, because I know I've been in situations where somebody will play like one of my my dad's tracks or whatever. And to me, his singing voice was so close to his speaking voice that it's almost a little, it can be a bit offsetting, to hear somebody that close to you, in that same kind of a tonal thing. It is beautiful, man. And, it's an honor to meet you and to speak with you.
Oh, same here, buddy.
Yeah,
All right. Well, Fritz and I have a couple of questions. And this one is for both of you. And, Bruce, in your book, you talk about your relationship with your dad, who pushed back against your interest in the entertainment business. And John, you grew up with a dad who was larger than life. And so I'd love it if you could both talk about how you strove to earn the respect of your fathers.
John, why don't you go first, buddy? You're the one that had a father who was a legend. I just had a father.
Well, one thing I never missed was support from my family. Now, Harry, of all people, was smart enough to tell me, "Hey, man, don't do that." He realized I was a pretty good golfer when I was a kid, and I can remember Harry was trying to send me to Arnold Palmer at a golf school in Lake Tahoe.
Wow!
I was about 11, 12 years old, and Harry promised. He said, "Man, John," he was calling me Skip. He said, "Just go play golf." And this is a direct quote. I'll never forget this. He said, "John." If you
hold that thought for 1 second and let John finish his thought, and then
I'm sorry,
because he was about to quote Harry.
Forgive me, I'm sorry.
No, please, man. I've quoted Harry too many times my whole life. Harry's fascination was, again, I try to keep things in perspective, and he understood the world. He understood showbiz. I mean, these guys, when you talk about, like, this isn't today. It wasn't the internet. If you went and did a tour in Europe in 1934, you were on a steamship or some kind of ship that was going to be, weeks, getting back and forth and stuff. So the grind of being of the artists that they were, even as magnificent as their careers were, it had to be extraordinary, and it had to take tremendous dedication. So while he was watching professional golf open up, 12 years old, it's 1968. So again, keeping things in perspective, as black successful, if you want to say that, men in the United States, they took on the responsibilities of sponsoring other young black golfers on the PGA Tour. All the Charlie Siffords and all those cats, they didn't have any love from white media sponsors. I mean, they barely were able to get into tournaments, and this is why the PGA started calling things invitationals, and they didn't have to allow in all professional golfers. So again, trying to keep things in perspective, having seen the way things were growing and coming about, Harry's thing was, listen, man, you can have a career in professional golf. And his quote was, Wheezy, "I guarantee if you just finish in the top 10, you don't have to win anything, but if you just finish in the top 10, you'll make more than $100,000 a year." and to him, this was a gold mine, and beat, trying to catch the next plane to.
Hey, John, the documentary about the brothers on YouTube is fascinating, And it goes back to some really old film, like late 20s, early 30s. And what I was blown away by was even with the old primitive recording techniques, their harmonies were just pristine, even in that scratchy old sound that came out of those. And I mean, that separated the men from the boys, as far as I'm concerned. But somebody in the interviews made a great comment. When asked about the key to their success over 55 years, he said, the key is when you're with brothers, work together, live apart.
Remember that.
How did the brothers get along? Seriously, I mean, they seem so close and tight and finish one another's thoughts and stuff.
Well, you got to remember, man. I mean, like, I was born in '56. So they were, 22, 32, 42, 52. They had already been at it, 30-some years professionally before I was even around. I never noticed any discrepancies of any, anger or whatever between them. By the time I was born, my dad was living more in Los Angeles than other parts of the country. But I understood Herb lived in New York for many years. When he was in, they all lived in New York for many years, but I think he kept a place there longer than they did. When they all pretty much settled in Los Angeles as a first place base, they lived close enough to each other to be able to see each other whenever they wanted to and not be a bother to each other, whenever they didn't. Herb ended up later years moving to Las Vegas. Herb loved... Like different people can live in Las Vegas. My dad wouldn't be the kind of guy who could live in Vegas, but
I couldn't either.
Right, but Herb loved it because he didn't gamble. He loved people. He was a people watcher, and even when he moved there, I think ESPN, a couple of these places were just starting. When he retired, because he retired pretty much after Harry passed. I mean, when we started rehearsing the act again, it was myself, my dad, and I. Actually, they were going to use my brother Alan, but Alan, when Harry got ill, ended up working more in television, in the costuming end of the stuff, and so that was a good job. And so when I ended up working with him, it would have been myself and my dad and Herb, but Herb's back became too much of a grind. So that he lived in Las Vegas. He used to love to go to all the fights, the boxing matches. They had offered him if he wanted to become one of the boxing commissioners in the state of Nevada, which he thought about, but he didn't. But I mean, this is just how much he loved and enjoyed that. So, I mean, they lived apart, but I think my dad was in a hospital, the day Herb passed away. I kind of remember him them talk. They stayed in touch. Harry, whenever they rehearsed, they would rehearse at, somebody's house. I don't ever remember them like needing to go to some studio to rehearse. I don't remember any troubles, between the three of them. And if they did, it was short-lived,
So, Bruce, go ahead and tell that story about your relationship with your dad, because I think it's very interesting.
Well, my dad was my biggest fan in terms of my music ability and singing. I mean, I sang my first solo at age 4 on his radio show. He had a radio show in Chicago, and I sang God Bless America, for which I was told if I sang it through without a mistake, I'd get a stick and chewing gum. So live on the air, I sang, got to the end of the song, God bless America, my home, sweet home, where's my gum? Of course, the whole crowd broke up. The congregation applauded and got to their feet, and that was it. I was hooked. I wanted to be a singer. Well, right from that point forward, my dad, as a fundamentalist preacher, could see no career for me but being a gospel singer. Billy Graham was one of his friends, and he admired him a great deal, and he had a great tenor that traveled with him and sang in all his revival meetings named Cliff Burrows. Well, he used to say when I do a show with a performance with my dad, when he spoke, I'd get up and sing. Well, I'm Billy Graham and you're Cliff Burrows. So that was his fixation from age 4. And obviously, as we got older, we began to audition to preps and sing in nightclubs. There was a place in Hollywood called the Peacock Lane, corner of Western and Hollywood Boulevard. We were 17, 18 years old. He was saying it. My dad went down to watch us, walked in the front door, turned around, went right back out. And when I asked him later why, he said, that's a padded sewer. I don't spend time in padded sewers. So slowly our dreams of what I was going to be separated, and he insisted on making it a gospel career. I probably sang at 40 or 50 funerals and weddings growing up. My dad would do the eulogy, and then I would get up and sing, there'll be light in the road from the palace on high. And my dad afterwards said, oh, what a great team we are. You got such a great future. So when the final break came, I was a student at UCLA. We had just signed with Capitol Records. And that was okay with my dad because Capitol Records, you went to the studio right there in town. You didn't travel and go to padded sewers. No big deal. Then we got our first professional engagement to sing at Fax Nightclub in San Francisco. Well, to my father, San Francisco was Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, you might as well tell him I was going to sing at a house of ill repute. So that came a big break. And that the night before I left for San Francisco, we had the inevitable showdown in his inner sanctum, his office, his magnificent office in the church sanctuary. And when I had to go over there and knock on the door and talk to him in his office, I always trembled because I was entering, the inner sanctum. And I just said, Dad, this is what I want to do. I'll try and keep on the straight and narrow. I know that's what you want, but this is something I've dreamed of forever since I heard the Mills Brothers, and I've got to do this. And so from then on, we never had an alienation. He just simply was not that enthused about it. And we did, I don't know how many Ed Sullivan shows. Well, he never saw one because he was in church at the pulpit on Sunday night when Ed Sullivan was broadcasting. And of course, in those days, he didn't have recording. So he had a kind of a guarded pride in what the Preps accomplished. When we got our hits, he'd come to college. We did a lot of college concerts. He'd come to a concert at UCLA or SC and enjoy it thoroughly. But, he never was thrilled that I didn't become a gospel singer.
Mm-hmm. That's tough, man. But I've heard that similar other artists who their parents were like that. I mean, they said Sam Cooke went through that. Marvin Gaye went through a little bit of that. I think that when they were tied to that church, of course, the Mills Brothers might have been the worst thing happening if you were a fan of Brahms or Mozart or something. I mean, I don't know. It's everybody has their bugaboos, right? But I think it's tough when it's coming from your parents. I mean, from
my mother was a great counterbalance to my father. I'd sit on the piano next to her for an hour, as I said in the book, while supper burned on the stove. We were learning the new choral arrangement. And how I learned how to read music, she'd get, in those days, if you were interested as a choir director in a particular new anthem, you'd contact the publisher. They'd send you a sample sheet of the sheet music. This was before Xerox. My mom would put the sheet music on the piano and say, okay, sing the melody. And I'd sing the melody. She said, I'll sing the alto. I'd sing the alto an octave higher. I'd sing the bass. I'd sing the bass an octave higher. So she was a radio gospel singer when she met and married my father. He had a radio show. She was one of the singers on the show, and that's how they got together. But she was such a champion of mine and such a supportive help and such a vocal coach. And when you say the word hurry, don't say hurry, say hurry. Enunciation, getting the consonants out, staying in tune, warming up properly. So between my mom and my dad, I guess I came out okay because I had both elements working on me.
So I'm really interested in phrasing because you've got everyone needs to pronounce the word and finish the word. And when sometimes words end with, a couple of consonants. So how do you work on phrasing and how do you get that right?
May I offer an answer? I don't know. I'm not sure who you're asking, but
both of you, yeah.
It was a funny thing. We caught lightning in a bottle in the Preps, in that Marv Ingram, our high tenor, as I say, one of the best singers I've ever sung with, and I read music. The other two guys didn't. But I remember Ross Barber saying to me, or the freshman, he said, you guys seem to understand each other and phrase just automatically. Glenn Larson, our baritone, because all our parts, John, were written. by the man we called the Fifth Prep. He was a man named Lincoln Mayorga, who's a genius pianist and arranger. And sometimes he'd show Marv his high tenor part, Marv would read it, and I'd get my melody. Glenn would intuit the baritone part without hearing a note of it. He knew right where he was supposed to go and what he was supposed to do. And our bass, Ed Cobb, who had a 4-octave range and a wonderful bass, I remember once early on, I said, Ed, I can teach you how to read music if you'd like. He said, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I just want to do it the way I've always done it. I want it to be natural. And as far as phrasing, we worked hard on it. My mom had trained me. If there's a consonant in the word, pronounce the consonant. Mm-hmm. So, and if you sing hurry, don't sing hurry, sing hurry. And if you say whisper, then whisper the tone, if the word is whisper. So I got a lot of that from my mom. And as I say, the four of us kind of fell into it naturally, I guess. We certainly never phrased with the ease of the Mills brothers, but we managed to get by.
You guys did terrific. Similar, the guy's mother was sang light opera, and their father was a concert bass singer. So I've seen a playbill, I doubt if that's what it was called then, but of him doing like solo concerts in 1910. So they had this musical back, and I guess whether you were in radio or doing a live performance, the idea was, if the audience couldn't understand what you were saying, well, that didn't help, right? So when you talk about phrasing, enunciation, articulation, I think that went hand in hand. And also, the feel of a song is kind of like that pillow that you lay against, right? So you can do your phrasing. And if the song is rushed or out of tempo, or if somebody's pushing it too fast, or if you're working with a band that slow means soft and loud means fast, sometimes there's no in between, and it's hard to talk them down. Everybody isn't very. You can't always work with Count Basie, man, or with some.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about live musicians is it's not always. Like, you can work with the greatest musicians in the world, but if they're phoning it in, it's not going to come over, right? You can work with musicians who are really struggling to get everything that they're supposed to get, and that gets across to the audience, even more so than any mistakes. So all of this works hand in hand with the ability to deliver the phrasing that you want to put over in a song. If you listen to Sinatra, isn't the whole thing with Sinatra his phrasing, right? The way he delivered. Right. And if you listen to his orchestrations, and of course the greatest, arrangers in the world and the greatest studio musicians in the world, nothing was ever in his way. Same thing with Sarah Vaughan. Obviously the most delicious voice ever and one of those tremendous ranges, but it's all phrasing. And it's because, if you listen to her stuff, it's like strings, and maybe some sweet trio. You didn't always have, she didn't need all these punchy things going on everywhere, and that just gave her the room to phrase. I think it's one of the most underrated things that a singer can ever do is how to articulate and how to phrase. So much so that today's software and computers, they create ways to correct pitch or to stretch a note, or obviously the software people realize how important it is. So,
well, your dad on I'll See You in My Dreams. The song is "Someone Took You Out of My Arms." No, someone took you out of my arms. And we used to do a satire about a singer going, "Softly, I will leave you." Wait a minute. And I saw Wayne Newton in Vegas one night. He tends to be fairly glib. And he opened with, "Where have all the flowers gone? Long time." And he gets to, "Where have all the young men gone? Gone to graveyards, yeah, one and all." Wayne, you're talking about kids dying in war and going, what are you doing? Snapping your fingers going, "Yeah, graveyard."
Amen. But I remember when Wayne was a kid and working in Vegas, when he was too young to walk through the casino.
I think they lied about his age too, because his voice didn't drop till he was 21. So I think they told folks he was 18 because he was tall, but he was 13.
Yeah.
He had a beautiful voice when he was a kid, man. I mean, he always had a beautiful voice. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Listen to any great solo artist or any great group. I mean, another thing for phrasing could be the syncopation of whatever that phrase is that you're sending. So it doesn't matter if you were in a jazz thing, guitar players try and sound like sax players, and sax players try and articulate like, great guitar soloists. And if you're in a different era of music, the Boswell sisters had a sound, but they still had to phrase, whatever it was they were putting. And because you're singing in a vocal group, you can't do 2 or 3 different phrasings. It's like it needs to be in sync. And the other thing I noticed about the guys, and this was true like even to late in my dad's life, is the breath control he had. I don't know where it came from. I mean, this guy probably smoked 2-3 packs of cigarettes a day since he was 10. I don't know how he did it. I do remember that when I would take him for a physical or something, like even late in his life, even when he wasn't well, people were amazed at how his lungs were just like, when they tell him take a deep breath, and they would say, okay, you can stop now. I mean, because he had this capacity. And then when they sang their notes, they knew how much air to put behind them. And this guy had a real breathy sound, man. So he sounded like he was just like, he'd send you this loving fog or whatever, but he never cheated a note. If you listen to any of the endings of his notes, they were just as beautiful as the beginning of them. So I think phrasing means a lot, Weezy.
Yeah, me too. I just want to ask one question of Skip before we go. I'm just wondering, because I don't know if we've ever talked about how your relationship with your father grew during those years that you were traveling together as partners, I guess it would be, as father and son, but, and I'm sure he's always your father within that. But how did you come to know one another and grow together during that journey?
It's different working. I tried to take something out of all of them, from on stage, from doing the Mills Brothers show. The Mills Brothers show was unlike anything I've ever had a chance to do musically. I mean, I always did my own music. I was a composer also. I always liked the idea of doing, some hipper stuff or whatever. But, you remember I was the guy who told him I didn't think Cab Driver would ever work in 1968. And of course that's why they never listened to me. So, because it's 68. I mean, I'm listening to the Temptations and, there's so much stuff going on. But that said, working with him he was great. I mean, my feeling was Harry was gone, and Weezy, you knew Harry a bit, so you might pick up some aspects of this. Harry wasn't an arrogant fellow, but Harry knew who he was, and he knew what he had accomplished over his career, and that wasn't about being prideful, but he did require people to treat him with the respect that he gave to them. And so when I started working with my father, and now you can imagine, okay, if we're working for people who've been booking, well, the first thing you're going to hear is, well, there's no way, just like you mentioned, is there any way 3 guys could sound like 4? Well, there certainly wasn't any way 2 guys could sound like 3. Right. And I'm like, listen, man, he's always going to be Donald Mills. So I don't care, however, whatever we do, I'm never going to embarrass the group. I'm never, even when Herb first started going into rehearsal with my dad and I remember Herb had some trepidations because if Herb left when he left on top. And he really never wanted to, he was concerned, he didn't want to get involved in something that was going to be lessened than what it was that they had accomplished. And that wasn't an ego, that was just a reality, right?
Yeah.
And he worked very hard. And it was harder for him to sing all those high tops at the age of 77 or whatever he was then than it was, when he was younger. So for him to stop it wasn't the end of the world. He had a beautiful life in Vegas. With my dad, he just wanted to keep going, man. The album that we did, the Still There's You album, I think we first went into the studio in 91 or 92, somewhere around there. I know we reformatted it for digital CDs, I think in 95. So I think it was in 91 or so. He was like already 76 years old at the time of recording, and his recording, I mean, he should have been Grammy nominated. The way he did You Always Hurt the One You Love just on that album was just remarkable. So he was a guy who never lost his chops. He always enjoyed singing. And when I started working with him, I first took the position like I wasn't going to let anybody, diminish him. We used to put on our contracts, when people hired us, it was John and Donald Mills of the Mills Brothers. And the idea wasn't to give my name first. The idea was he did not ever want to do concerts that his fans would come see and expect something different than what was on stage. He didn't want to put a fake group of guys together that could just sing. Some guys... I remember, I won't mention any names, but I remember one guy telling another guy in a group, just go get you and three nobodies and you can keep doing your show. Well, that was never his thing, man. We never just tried to put bodies on stage. So I joined him when I was 27 years old, man. And I spent my time, first of all, just making sure that things were good for him. Things were comfortable for him. That when we went to San Francisco, we didn't have some promoter who was trying to put him in some place he wouldn't stay when he was a teenager. No, we're still at the Fairmont, or whatever. So a lot of that carried on, and he was always great by me. And if you ever see any early footage of us together, the only thing I ever changed was, like the brothers, when they sang, they always used one microphone. And we did that forever until it seemed like he might have lost a little, never his tone, but maybe the force of his voice. So rather than me, I started backing off a bit just to keep that blend. But at some point in time, I made it a point, then I had them bring, two microphones to the stage and then get a nice balance of his voice consistent, because he was always the sound anyway, man. I'm just trying not to get in his way. And everybody we ever worked with, those were his buddies and his friends. And I was just lucky enough to be along for that ride, man. And when you're working with people who I consider giants and they're looking at him like, oh my God, I'm on the stage with this guy. I worked with Woody, man, before he passed. Not like his band, like Woody, man. And we're sitting backstage and he's curled over like, like it might be easier to kneel than to stand up. And then when his music hits, right?
Yeah.
He's getting ready to take the stage. He just unfolds like a military staff DI sergeant, man. His back goes straight, and he just took the stage with such command. This is how these guys were. This is how your generation was, Bruce. You guys took so much elegance, pride, and professionalism in knowing how honorable, how nice it was that an audience would actually come to see you sing and listen and have a great time. And this is the other thing. You asked me, like, working with my dad. It's so different because we worked, I don't know how many places all over the world. It was not like today. Like if you had friends in the audience, it was a nice surprise, right? Or maybe if you had some relatives show up or whatever. Today, man, you do a show, like the promoters almost expect you to call every one of your friends and their cousins and their buddies, and if you can get them to buy drinks too, we might be able to pay you guys. I mean, it's like the biggest, and it's like, where did that go, man?
Yeah.
Because these artists, man, they filled the room, and because I worked with the kind of music that it was, it did not keep me from working with any type of artist. I mean, I worked with like the Eddie Arnolds of the world, all the country cats, man, all the great jazz guys. It's just this beautiful body of work. And me working with him, to go back to finishing your question, there is nothing that could compare to that. He was as great to me as he was when I was 7 years old. He's trying to teach me how to hit a 7-iron, at the golf course. I mean, he was very protective also. He always put me over when we talked. He always would when we would slay a show, he wasn't like me. He was always pointing it over. And if you ever look at any of the stuff, the little footage that we might have on stage together, you can see it in his eyes, man, when we catch each other's eyes and look at each other. I think I made him, I think he was very happy. And I think it's just an odd thing familially, that we were able to continue on as long as we did. And he also knew I wanted to do other music, but this was a great opportunity. And
you can have missed the flight. You got 4 hours sleep. The food was terrible at the hotel. And here they are. And suddenly, boom, and you get off stage and realize how tired you are. But it's a great energizer. And the devotion with which the Mills Brothers were always received. I mean, what they represented, how many other groups sang songs during World War II that we'll never forget, that brought couples closer, were separated by the war. I mean, till then, it's what a tribute. John, I got to tell you, buddy, you come from a great gene pool.
Well, I thank you. It wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't mean half as much. Without being able to have these kinds of conversations. I've had them with many people, like I said, the Ed Ameses and all these cats, but I've never had a chance to really chronicle them. I talked to Don Newcomb, who was one of the great Dodger pitchers, forever, and cats, and especially, just bringing in the component of them being young black children, and then young black teenagers, and then young black men, and then growing into middle-aged black men, and all the turbulence that was going on in the country all around them all the time, all the different changes, and how they were always just there for each other, and how they were always there for everybody around them. A friend of mine asked, it's always been tough to do like a Mills Brothers musical or something, which I pushed for a while. One of the guys was saying, there's just no scandal in their lives. There was just, how books are sold and movies are sold, or, you got to talk about the dirt, like who did they hate, or whatever. But I was telling him that for the Mills Brothers, the extraordinary thing to me was that they normalized being black in your house. When they came on the radio, when they came on television, when they came on, traveling around the world, they were in people's homes for so many years, day in and day out and day in. And this is what, even when you talk about the 1930s films and stuff, right? Or whatever they call those soundies, their extraordinary civil rights presentation was that they made it possible for everyone else. Mm-hmm. And they made they normalized, blackness in mainstream homes. And hey, man, that didn't change the world, but it sure made it a lot better for everybody I ever talked to, man. I mean, I talked to Sammy Davis. Sammy Davis told me he couldn't have done anything without the Mills Brothers. Nat Cole, man. My dad introduced Marie to Nat. That's how you got Natalie. So there's an extraordinary life that they lived that had very little to do with being on stage, but could not have happened had they not been on stage. Wow. So anyway, Bruce, I love you, man, and
love you, buddy.
We can meet wherever is close or wherever is far. I have them in Santa Barbara. Maybe we can go up there one day.
I love it. Well, I'm 86. I want to do this before my bucket gets kicked.
I'm going to hook it up, Bruce. I'm going to hook it up. I want to say to you, Skip, and I know you know this, but you gave your father the most beautiful gift. That he could not only continue singing, doing what he loved, what made him feel the most like himself and the gift that he had, but then your gift and seeing the man that you had become on stage next to him after sharing that space with his brothers, now sharing it with his son. I can't, I know you know how profound that is, but it's just beautiful, just beautiful. And I think Fritz had one more.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say a couple of comments. First of all, I think the Mills Brothers and their style and their joie de vivre on stage and the way they impeccably dressed and their choreography all traveled. You mentioned it earlier, John, 1968, talking about Motown. I think those guys, the Tops and the Temps and all those guys saw the importance of that elegance and making audiences comfortable that way. And that was the Mills Brothers.
I think even if they didn't, Barry Gordy and Barry had a staff of people who trained, who made, his artists become stage worthy, and costumers and choreographers and that whole thing. So, I took due note, man. I sat backstage with Harry Belafonte one night. We were in Cohasset, Massachusetts. They used to have this tent there that people would work. I forget what they called it, but and he was closing one night. We were going to play there the next day, and I saw him and my dad just sit back in his trailer, and they must have talked for 2 hours, man. And I'm just like taking this shit in, pardon my language, because it's just remarkable. I mean, and to my dad, like Harry's like a young kid. Now he's already an older guy, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, and there's just this, I don't know how to explain it, man. I don't know whose lives they didn't touch, whether it was musically or, with all the different media that they, from the phonographs, hey, man, you mentioned Till Then and the war stuff. This last Christmas, not this one, but the one that passed before, there was this movie with DiCaprio, Don't Look Up. And he does like this whole scene in this car where he's playing Till Then to his girlfriend, wife. I can't remember this, and he's got this kid in the back and he's describing, man, this is the Mills Brothers. And listen to these words, and Harry's singing, it's just they did like 10 minutes of Mills Brothers stuff in this movie that was just out at the end of 2021.
Yeah, how many decades later?
I mean, this is where it is, man. And it's a magnificent thing, and I don't take it lightly.
I want to talk about Till Then, since you brought it up, because Bruce earlier talked about how impactful that song was. It was recorded in 1948, the Mills Brothers version.
No, it was recorded earlier than that, because that was
during the war.
During the war.
Oh, okay. I don't know where I got that date wrong, but anyway, it was so resonant with families that had kids fighting abroad. Then it was re-released by a band called the Classics in 1963, which made the song relevant to people who had kids fighting in Vietnam. So it got recycled for the same emotion all those years later. Pretty important.
And the Hilltoppers had a hit on it in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those songs, even the Mills, like when you said they did it in 48, they may have, because they re-recorded their own songs, several times, different albums and different labels and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, and they were also fortunate just to have these they all chose great music. They wouldn't do a song unless they all liked it. Right. And I mean, look at all of the, the tunes that just have left Paul McCartney, on Kisses on the Bottom, I think it was. He had written a song for them called My Baby's Regret or something like that. Excuse me if I messed it up, Sir McCartney. I actually have a copy of the lead sheet here that he had sent to Henry Miller's office. Wheezy remembers Henry, for them to record. But Harry was already getting a little bit, sick, and they never had a chance to record it. So I listened to a recording that he did with Wings. And I just recently, a good friend of mine, my sound engineer, met Paul McCartney's guitar player with Wings, who remembers recording that song. And McCartney just redid it with Diane Krall, and I think she was on piano, and John Clayton on bass, and these cats when he did Kisses on the Bottoms. And I think he also does Bye Bye Blackbird. So, even the Beatles, man, were, they understood, what. And the last I'll leave you with this was Elton John. I had a friend who played horn on when he was traveling, not this last year, but several years ago, man. And that's what he would talk about. He said, like on the road, they would talk about the Mills Brothers stuff that they were doing, man. So
that's amazing.
It's a world of. I don't, that and a cup of coffee will get you a cup of coffee, but I do share these things with my children so that we'll have a conversation if they want, with anybody that means much to them. And I'm good with it, man.
Well, I wanted to show you one thing, Bruce, because, it's just possible. This is from Ciro's, and this may be the night that you met Harry. I don't know, but it's a picture of them with their mom and dad. So on the back it says April 9th, 1956. So I don't know if that was the night, but...
Well, I was born in 36 and I was 15 when it happened. So I knew I should have listened in math class. I don't...
No, I think that could be a little beyond when you met him, but pretty much in that pocket. And
what year was that?
This you had just been born, Skip. This is April 9th, 1956.
I wasn't.
So I graduated from high school.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet, but I was just thinking, their dad worked with them, I think, up until 58. So he might have been, working with the group then, because he spent 22 years with them. Mm-hmm. And for Ethel to be in that picture with them, that was their mom. That's a keepsake, man. I was born in May, so my mother was probably pissed that my dad wasn't home.
She was very pregnant in that moment. All right, so we have what we're doing until we have sponsors for our show is we're going to let our favorite causes be our sponsor and our shout out. So who are we help others tonight?
We're going to talk about the Children's Burn Foundation, an organization very close to my heart. I'm on the board of directors there. A person's life can instantly change with a burn injury. Now, this really sprang to people's attention recently with Jay Leno having his accident. He got burned in a gasoline fire at his classic car garage. He was treated at the Grossman Burn Center in Sherman Oaks, which is one of the original supporters of the Children's Burn Foundation. Fortunately, Jay's having a fast and miraculous recovery. We're thankful for that. But for children, recovery can be a prolonged, painful, and expensive experience. Without access to comprehensive care, that child and their family will suffer devastating physical, financial, and emotional harm. They have access to full help and resources through the Children's Burn Foundation. We also offer burn prevention and education for both kids and parents. These are kids from all over the world, including young burn victims from the Ukraine. And this time of year, we like to ensure that children's burn survivors are able to escape the stress of their surgeries and their treatments and find happiness and normalcy. Every year, 500 child burn survivors and their families gather for festivities, including food and drinks and toys and dinner and donations by generous donors. If you'd like to donate, please, you won't find a more worthy group of dedicated human beings than Children's Burn Foundation. Go to childburn.org. You can learn all about their heroic work and hopefully hit the Donate Now button, and we thank you.
And here come your closing credits. Thank you so much for joining us. We would love to continue this conversation with you. On Instagram and Twitter, where we are at MediaPathPod, and on Facebook, where our show page is MediaPath Podcast, and our Facebook group is called MediaPath with Fritz and Wheezy Podcast Community. You can find full video podcast episodes loaded with bonus visual content on our YouTube channel, MediaPath Podcast. You can write to us at MediaPathPodcast@gmail.com. And if you enjoy the show, please give us a nice rating and a review in Apple Podcasts using words, for instance, like magnificent and groundbreaking. And talk about us on social media if you would so kindly do that. You can sign up for our fun and dishy newsletter at MediaPathPodcast.com. We want to thank our wonderful guests, John Mills and Bruce Belland. Our team includes Dina Friedman, John Maddox, Sharon Bellio, Bill Filipiak, Thomas Hubble, Mason Brown, Garrett Arch, and you. Our theme music is by me and John Maddox. I am Louise Palanker, here with Fritz Coleman, Bruce Belland, and John Mills. Be well and wise, and we will see you along the media path. Yeah, Bruce, you were almost too good at this.
You're fantastic.
But we enjoyed being on your show.
Oh,
So-
my wife's going to give me such static. I could.